Hello everyone, welcome to our PMP exam question and answer solving session for December. Now, if you are preparing for the PMP exam, you can use today's class to assess how well you are prepared for the exam, okay? So out of the 5 questions that we are going to solve today, the target will be to get all the 5 out of the 5 questions correct. However, the minimum expectation is that you should get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct to consider yourself fairly well prepared for the PMP exam. Now, anything less than that, you might need a bit more preparation, okay? Also, if you are preparing for the PMP exam, you might want to check out my training courses on Udemy, and you can also consider to join my YouTube membership community. All of them are very well reviewed amongst the students like you, and I will provide all the details on how you can join the same later on in this video, okay? So give this video a like, get a pen and a paper, and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1, guys, please read the question, pause the video and try to answer it before we solve this together, okay? Right, so let's get started. The scenario described in the question revolves around a team member implementing a workaround to resolve a blocking issue during a critical phase of the project, okay? However, after the deployment of the solution, an error emerged in the related system component, leading to concerns from a key stakeholder. The question asks us to evaluate the best responses the project manager should take to handle this situation effectively. The focus here should be on addressing the immediate problem, right? Ensuring lessons are learned, and of course, that will help to prevent similar issues from occurring in the future. Right, so the correct answer to this question is option A and option B, guys, okay? Because these reflect a balanced approach to address the issue thoughtfully and constructively. Now, if you look at option A, asking the team member to present their rationale and the lessons learned, this is an appropriate response because it prioritizes understanding the reasoning behind the action taken, okay? This approach fosters accountability without assigning blame and of course creates an opportunity to uncover the root cause of the issue. When faced with unexpected challenges, team members often take swift actions under pressure to ensure progress, okay? And probably you have seen this happening in your project as well. So by engaging the team member in a discussion about their rationale, the project manager creates a psychologically safe environment that encourages transparency and collaboration. This conversation can of course reveal critical insights such as whether the workaround was necessitated by unclear processes, or probably it was necessitated due to insufficient guidance or gaps in the team communication, etc., etc. Okay. So lessons learned from such incidents can then be applied to strengthen the team practices and the decision making in future scenarios like this. That is why option A is definitely correct. Now, if you look at option B, working with the team to identify gaps in the quality assurance process. So this addresses the systemic aspect of the problem. Now, when errors are identified post deployment, they generally often indicate that quality checks were either insufficient or probably improperly executed. This option emphasizes the importance of refining quality assurance processes to ensure similar issues are detected before the release, right? Collaborating with the team to identify these gaps can lead to improvements in the testing protocols, probably better alignment on acceptance criteria, and of course, enhanced cross-functional reviews. So by focusing on broader systems rather than just the individual action, the project manager ensures that the team learns from the incident in a way that strengthens the overall project delivery. So this action also demonstrates to stakeholders that the team is committed to continuous improvement and accountability, which of course builds trust and credibility. So that is why option B is also correct. Now the other options, while they seemingly look okay on the surface, do not adequately address the underlying issues. Okay, so let's look at option 3, issuing a formal reprimand to the team member for taking unauthorized actions. Now this may seem like a corrective measure, but it risks damaging the team morale and trust, okay? Mistakes are often the result of systemic gaps rather than individual failings, okay? Penalizing the team member outright could discourage initiative and make the other team members hesitant to act decisively in the future, even in situations where quick problem solving is necessary. So as a servant leadership in this scenario, you are not making the environment conducive enough for your employees or for your team members to take calculated risks, right? So a constructive approach, which is let's say option A and option B, is far more effective in fostering a culture of accountability and learning. And that is why option C is incorrect. Now let's look at option D or option 4, working with the team member to identify gaps in project requirements. So this misidentifies the nature of the problem. Straightforward, guys, okay? While gaps in requirements can lead to defects, this scenario stems from an error introduced during the implementation of a workaround, right? Not from unclear requirements, okay? Try to understand the difference here. Redirecting focus to requirements would not resolve the root cause of the current issue or prevent similar errors in the future, okay, which is but obvious. It is more relevant to concentrate on the processes surrounding quality assurance and testing as highlighted in option B, okay. So that is why option D or option 4 is incorrect. Finally, let's look at option 5, which essentially says that responding to the stakeholder that mistakes are inevitable but will be remedied later on, right? So this clearly does not provide a substantive solution. While acknowledging that errors can occur in complex project is reasonable, now this response lacks the proactive focus needed to rebuild stakeholder confidence, okay? Stakeholders expect project managers to take ownership of problems, right? Think about it. And of course, they also expect the project manager will demonstrate a clear plan for addressing both the immediate issue and its root causes. So without tangible actions like those outlined in option A and option B, this response risks appearing dismissive or unaccountable as a project manager. So that is why, of course, option E is also incorrect. So in summary, option A and option B represent a practical, they represent a constructive and a professional response to the scenario. They of course focus on understanding the decision-making processes, identifying systemic gaps, and implementing improvements to prevent recurrence. Okay, so that is why option A and option B are the correct answer choices to this question.
Now, if you are preparing for your PMP exam, guys, I would suggest that you check out my PMP exam preparation courses on Udemy. All the courses are very highly rated amongst the students, and many PMP aspirants like you have passed their PMP exam with the help of these courses. You can check the student reviews on Udemy, and all the links will be provided in the description section of this video in case you are interested to join. Okay, and now let's move on to question number 2.
Okay, so question number 2, guys, the drill will remain the same. Please pause the video, read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. Right, so let's get started. So the scenario here presented revolves around a common challenge faced by project managers during the project closeout phase, which is to transition the deliverable to the operational support. So in this case, the deliverable is a customer relationship management software or a CRM software. The project manager is being asked to address the user concerns, evaluate feature requests, and adjust systems configurations. So these are the tasks that suggest that ongoing development and troubleshooting will be required even after the project has been handed over. The question asks that what should the project manager do? And of course, it offers 4 options, requiring us to identify the most appropriate step in ensuring that the project is properly closed and a proper transition has happened from the project team to the operations team. Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. So first, let's look at option C, okay, which is to release the project team and focus on the next initiative. Now, of course, this can be ruled out immediately, guys, okay, because it neglects the fundamental responsibility of ensuring a smooth transition of the deliverable to the operational support. So think about it, simply releasing the project team without a proper handover or a transition would leave the organization unprepared to manage the CRM system, right? And of course, this could potentially lead to service disruptions. So this approach demonstrates a lack of responsibility during the closure phase, and of course, which violates the project management best practices as outlined in the project management body of knowledge, right? So that is why option C is straightforward incorrect. Now let's consider option B, okay? Procure formal project acceptance from stakeholders. Now, while procuring acceptance is an important step during the project closure, it is not the final step in this scenario. Okay, so whenever you are evaluating a question, always evaluate it with respect to the scenario that has been provided. The question here indicates that the deliverable still requires operational support, okay, meaning the project manager must also ensure the handoff or the handover to the team that will maintain and manage the CRM system once the project team has been disbanded. Okay, so formal acceptance first at this situation cannot happen for sure, because the customer or the end user will not accept something which is requiring so much of hand holding or so much of troubleshooting. And also this does not address the critical requirement of a smooth transition from the project team to the operations team. So that is why option B is also incorrect. Now that leaves us with option A and option D. Okay. Now if we carefully look at option A, it probably seems logical at a first glance. Okay, because as it is addressing user concerns, it is probably helping to resolve the bugs and adjusting configurations, which of course aligns with ensuring customer satisfaction, right? Now you may also reason that many new project managers might feel obligated to continue fulfilling such requirements to demonstrate responsibility and ownership to the customer or the end user. However, continuing to address these kind of requests would result in extending the scope of the project beyond its defined boundaries, right? Think about it. According to the PMBOK guidelines, project closure entails completing all planned work and ensuring that the deliverable is ready for operational use, right? Not indefinitely continuing the development or the support after the development, right? Because if you go about the definition of project, a project should have a solid start and a solid finishing line, right? So by addressing additional requests for an indefinite period of time, the project manager risks scope creep, inefficient resource allocation, and of course delays in transitioning the product to operations team. Okay, therefore, while of course from an intention standpoint it is okay, option A contradicts the principle of scope management and a effective project closure process. Okay, so of course that leaves us with option D, which is the correct answer choice here. Executing the project handoff to the operations or the support team ensures that the responsibility for maintaining and improving the CRM system is appropriately transitioned to the operations team. Okay, so this aligns with the PMBOK guideline, and of course it emphasizes on completing the project by transferring knowledge, having the right documentation, and of course making sure that the stakeholders or the end users have complete ownership and responsibility of the deliverables after the project is complete. Now, as a project team, you can help that by preparing, let's say, standard operating procedures, troubleshooting guides, or probably doing like a 1 month of trial where you will be hand holding the operations team to troubleshoot or let's say come out of any impediments, etc., etc. But the transition needs to definitely happen at one point. Okay, and this is where the project handoff or the ownership of the project really goes from the project team to the operations team. Okay, so that is a very critical aspect that you need to keep in mind, because as a project manager you cannot keep on addressing the issues or troubleshooting for the client for time infinity, right? So that is the key reason why option D encapsulates the core responsibility of a project manager during the closeout phase, which is to formalize the transition and avoid unnecessary extensions to the basic scope of the project. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option D.
Now, before we move on to question number 3, guys, I would suggest that you check out my membership community on YouTube as part of your PMP exam preparation. I share daily posts on PMP exam tips, tricks, and strategies via this platform. Okay, it's a monthly subscription based service. Okay, and you can cancel anytime you want to. All the links will be provided in the description section of this video, so please do check it out. Okay, and now let's move on to question number 3.
Right, so let's move on to question number 3, guys. So please pause the video, read the question, and try to answer it before we solve this together. Right, so let's get started. The scenario in the question reflects a very common situation in agile environments. Okay, the product manager, of course, due to their busy schedule, is considering delegating some responsibilities to the experienced development team. The question of course, challenges you as the PMP exam aspirant to determine which task is most appropriate for delegation whilst adhering to the agile principles and respecting the distinct roles within the team. Okay. So let's systematically analyze the options, and of course with the basic premise that whenever we will reject an option, we will definitely reject it on solid grounds, and we will not reject an option just because it doesn't feel right, seem right, hear right, etc., etc. Okay. So any rejection should be based on solid ground and solid reasoning. So let's look at option A first, which suggests that prioritize items in the product backlog based on business values. Okay. Now in Scrum and Agile frameworks, backlog prioritization is a responsibility that firmly, okay, I repeat my words, firmly rests with the product manager or the product owner. Okay. So this task is critical because it directly ties to the strategic decision making and the alignment of the backlog with the business objectives, customer needs, and the value delivery of the overall project. Okay, so this is not something you can delegate. While the development team may contribute to the insights, especially on, let's say, technical dependencies or feasibility, the ultimate decision making authority lies with the product manager or the product owner. Okay. So delegating this task would probably will not be okay because the clear demarcation between the role of the product owner and the role of the team members will become very fuzzy in that situation, which will probably cause, let's say, misaligned priorities, and then it will start to undermine the accountability of the product owner as well. Okay, so that is why for this reason option A is incorrect and we can safely eliminate option A. Next, let's consider option B, facilitate and lead sprint planning meetings, right? So while the development team actively participates in sprint planning, the facilitation of these meetings is not a task that can again be delegated to the teams. Okay, because facilitating sprint planning involves managing stakeholder expectations, clarifying priorities, and ensuring alignment between the product vision and the sprint goal, right? Which are, think about it, are the core responsibilities of the product manager, right? So delegating this task could lead to confusion about strategic objectives and undermine the role of the product manager. Okay, so therefore option B can also be safely eliminated. Now that leaves us with option C and option D, right? Now, if you look at option C very closely, initially it might seem plausible because the development team does actively select work items for the sprint backlog during the sprint planning, right? So you can argue with this reasoning. However, please keep in mind that the task of backlog selection and backlog refinement is not something that the product manager will be delegating to the project team, because it is a standard responsibility of the product owner or the product manager to identify and select the work items required for a sprint or a iteration, and that is called backlog reprioritization or backlog refinement, etc., etc. Of course the team can contribute and give their inputs while selecting the backlog items for a particular sprint, but again, going to the core role and responsibility of the product owner, and of course the accountability part as well, the accountability of identifying and selecting the work items which needs to be worked upon on a sprint and an iteration solely lies with the product owner. Okay, so please keep that in mind. Go back to your agile practice guide or go back to whichever course you are following and study these core roles and responsibilities of the product owner, the scrum master, etc., etc. Okay, because these kind of understanding is very, very important for you to understand these role and responsibility questions correctly. Okay, so for this reason, of course, option C is incorrect because again, it is an incorrect delegation that option C suggests. Okay, now that leaves us with option D, which is of course the correct answer, which is to add new technical tasks to the product backlog before prioritization. Okay, and that is the key difference, right? Because you are telling the team here that, hey, look, you are free to come and suggest or add possible or probable tasks or backlog items before the prioritization or the refinement actually happens, right? And that is completely okay. In Agile, the product manager focuses on high level prioritization based on business value and strategic goals. Okay. And of course, they may rely on the development team to identify and add technical tasks such as, let's say, addressing the technical debt or implementing infrastructure improvements to the backlog. Okay. So this delegation makes practical sense because the development team possesses the technical expertise to recognize such needs. And of course, by delegating this task, the product manager ensures that the technical concerns are addressed without compromising their ability to focus on broader priorities. Okay, so very important concept that you need to take away as a part of the learning from this question. So this kind of delegation aligns with the agile principle of empowering teams while of course maintaining a clear role boundary between the team and the product owner. So that is why option D is the correct answer choice to this question.
Now, before we move on to question number 4, guys, make sure you do subscribe to my channel PMP with Ray for more such videos like this for your PMP exam preparation. Okay, your support really helps educational channels like this to grow on YouTube. And now let's move on to question number 4.
Right, so question number 4, guys. The drill will remain the same as the previous questions. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so let's get started. So here the scenario involves a project manager who is beginning to prepare the project management plan, right? After receiving the project charter. Now the person realizes that there is currently no historical information available from the organization's PMO or the project management office. So the question is asking that what should the project manager do next in this scenario? So let's go through the rationale of selecting or eliminating the answer choices step by step. Okay. So firstly, we can of course quickly eliminate option A, which is to utilize analogous estimating. Now think about it. While analogous estimating can be a useful technique when historical data is limited, it solely relies on comparing the current project to similar past projects. Okay. Now the word similar is very important here. Since the question states that there is no historical information available from the project management office, and of course it does not provide any sort of rationale that whether this project has been similar to some other previous projects as well, analogous estimating would not be a appropriate first step. Okay. So now let's jump option B and let's look at option C first, okay, which is to organize an initial kickoff call to gather initial requirements from the stakeholder and provide the input accordingly. Now, this is a very close answer choice, and under normal circumstances, organizing a kickoff meeting would be a logical step. However, you need to keep in mind that in this specific scenario where there is a lack of historical data, it would be quite premature to hold a kickoff meeting without first seeking expert advice, right? Because what you are going to discuss in that kickoff meeting, because you can ask the stakeholders that, okay, now come into the kickoff meeting and start contributing and helping you as a project manager to create the project management plan. Right now, this is too much of an expectation to ask from stakeholders. Of course, you can ask this from your team members, but you cannot really ask this from the stakeholders in a kickoff meeting, because the stakeholders are there in the kickoff meeting to listen from you and your team, okay, not to help you to start drafting the project documents or the project artifacts like the project management plan here, because that is the sole responsibility for you as a project manager and with your team members. So that is why organizing an initial kickoff call is very unproductive in this scenario. So that is why option C is also incorrect. Now let's look at option D, which is to request that the project sponsor provides input on the project management plan. Okay. Now again, it is an escalation, and seeking the sponsor's input without first gathering expert advice or first doing an analysis yourself could put your credibility as a project manager in question. And as we have discussed in multiple instances in our previous Q&A sessions, that escalation to the project sponsor is the last resort in 99.99% of the scenarios, which the PMP exam will provide you as part of the questions. Okay, so that is why option D is also incorrect. Okay, and therefore the correct answer to this question is option B, which is to seek advice from experts in the field. Okay, so this allows the project manager to leverage external expertise to compensate for the lack of internal historical data. Okay, and that lays a strong foundation for the project management plan. By first consulting industry experts or let's say subject matter experts within the organization, the project manager can of course move forward with a more informed and well-rounded planning process, and then probably think about holding a kickoff meeting, which is provided in option C, and then remotely, if that's required, having a meeting with the project sponsor just to update him or her regarding the findings and the analysis which the project manager has done, etc, etc. Okay, so that is why option B is the correct answer choice to this question, because go back to the stem of the question where it is very clear that the question is asking that what should the team or the project manager do next in this scenario. Okay, and the next best possible step in this scenario is to seek advice from experts in the field of software product development, as the project is about developing a new software product. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option B.
I hope you are finding this exercise helpful, right? Remember, the target is to get all the 5 out of the 5 questions correct. However, the minimum expectation is that you should get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct, right? So here comes the 5th and the final question.
Right, so the last and the final question, guys. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. So in this scenario, the project manager is faced with a concern that the team of the software development is expressing about the feasibility of delivering a new feature on time. Okay, and this concern is coming 2 weeks before the project kickoff. Okay, now you need to understand when the project kickoff happens. So that is the core learning which you need to take home as part of this question. So basically, if you go back to the project management body of knowledge, it is extremely crucial for you to understand that the project kickoff happens after the initiation and before the planning stage. Okay, because the kickoff meeting is actually, let's say, a phase gate between the initiation phase of the project and the planning phase of the project, and that is the sole learning as part of this question. Now let's continue. The project manager wants to ensure that the team can realistically meet the delivery schedule for this feature. The goal here is to determine the most appropriate course of action to address the team's concerns and ensure the success of the project. Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. So let's first look at option B. Okay, so option B suggests that hold a meeting with the executive sponsor to discuss the team's concerns and revise the project charter. Okay, outrageously abstract, right? First of all, again, meeting with the sponsor, and secondly, revising the project charter. This is something which no sensible project manager will do. Okay, because the project manager has not yet assessed the full scope of the team's concerns, right? Or neither the person has validated the feasibility of the feature. So revising the project charter in this situation, especially 2 weeks before the project actually moves from the initiation to planning, will be very, very reactive, and probably in the end, it may not address the core issue of understanding the technical feasibility of the feature, right? So that is the reason that option B is incorrect. And of course, we can safely eliminate option B. And I'm not even discussing the rationale that whenever you start engaging your executive sponsor or project sponsor, it will be treated as an escalation, which you ideally want to avoid as a project manager. Now let's look at option C, which proposes ensure that the concerns are documented in the issue log for a later review. Okay. Now, of course, documenting concerns in the issue log is a good practice. Okay, don't get me wrong. However, you need to ask yourself the question that is the issue log a document or a project artifact that is available during the initiation stage of the project? Because mind it, the kickoff meeting happens at the end of initiation and before the planning stage of the project, right? And the obvious answer is that no, the issue log is not something that exists during the initiation stage of the project, or even during the early planning stages of the project, right? Now, of course, the issue log is useful for monitoring issue or a risk which has transformed into an issue, but that happens during the beginning of the execution stage or probably as part of your monitoring and controlling process, etc., etc. Okay, so very critical understanding that you need to keep in mind that please learn that which project artifact is created in which phase of the project. Okay, so that is why option C is definitely incorrect, because your issue log doesn't really exist during the end of initiation phase or at the beginning of the planning phase of the project. Okay. Now that leaves us with option A and option D. Now, if you look at option D very closely, it mentions that you need to do like sort of a SWOT analysis, which is strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, to identify the potential risks and develop preventive actions. Okay. Now, a SWOT analysis can be helpful in understanding broader strategic landscape, and it could be useful for identifying some high-level risks early on. However, in this scenario, the key concern is the feasibility of delivering a specific feature on time, okay, which is a more tactical issue rather than a broader strategic goal. A SWOT analysis may help in identifying general threats, but it does not directly address the technical concerns and uncertainties that the team is experiencing about the feature's deliverability. Okay. While a SWOT analysis is valuable for overall project planning or overall project risk assessment, it is not a most direct tool to address any immediate technical concerns raised by the team during the initiation stage or the early planning stages of a project. So that is why option D is quite premature and it is incorrect. So that leaves us with option A, which is the correct answer to this question, which is to implement a prototyping study and then assess and review the result. Okay, because this is an appropriate approach in this scenario. The team's nervousness, or let's say the concern about the feasibility of the feature, suggests that there may be some technical uncertainties, okay, that needs to be explored before the project officially kicks off and moves from the initiation to the planning stage. A prototyping study allows the team to build a working model of the feature or key components of it, providing a tangible way to assess feasibility, complexity, and potential risks. Okay, as simple as that. So by evaluating the prototype, the team can better understand whether the feature can be delivered within the desired time frame and identify any technical challenges early on. Okay. Now this proactive approach allows the project manager to make informed decisions based on real data and not just theoretical concerns. Now you may ask the question that, Ray, is 2 weeks enough for doing a prototyping study? Now that is where I would like to counter argue with you, and I would say that as of now you don't know how complex or how simple is this new feature, right? Maybe this prototyping study could be done in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, who knows? So you don't have access to that information, right? So that is why it is not justified to assume that 2 weeks is not enough to complete a prototyping study. It might be more than enough in this scenario, right? So the correct answer to this question is option A, because it directly targets the technical uncertainty through prototyping, offering a practical and data-driven approach to assess the situation and make informed decisions.
So that's the end of the quiz, guys. Let me know in the comment section below how much you were able to score, okay? I'd be very interested to know that. Also, if you have scored less, please do not be demotivated, okay? You just need a bit more preparation. Do a thorough analysis of your mistakes so that you get to know about your knowledge gaps and you are able to fix those on time, okay? Thank you for watching, and I will see you again next month with another session on PMP exam practice questions and answers. Have a nice day and bye for now.